Hey, howdy. This is Sue Kalberg here in the Digital Center for KINS 5, and I'm being joined by Rogelio Sandoval. He is the Chief Appraiser for the Bexar County Appraisal District. Welcome to the Digital Center.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be awesome. For the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about all things related to property tax valuations because it's almost the season when people need to get prepared to file their thoughts
Their
about
appeal.
their valuations. And while we're talking about that, I'm really old school. If you have any questions beyond this, we're going to be taking questions. We have a producer here helping us, and they're going to be watching the chat. So if you have a specific question, we'll get to as many of those as possible. But BCAD.org, great website.
Thank you.
Right before we got here, look what I did. I went to your website and I looked at, like helpful things. Look at this list. This is a list of helpful things, topics that, if you miss it here or you don't see an answer here, there's a ton of things on here. Your rights. What's the formal hearing process like? Saving on your property taxes. Who doesn't want to save money? I do this every year. I'm so glad to be sitting here with him because I've walked through this process so many times. And if you've been too scared to reach out or you don't know enough about it or you feel like you can't do it, I do it. He can help you through it. All of his people, they're very helpful. Arbitration, adopted tax rates, property tax code, stuff that's going on in the legislature. All you have to do is go to bcad.org and get a lot of stuff that's helpful to you.
Absolutely.
So let's start at ground zero with the role of your organization.
Thank you, Sue. Again, thank you for the invitation. First and foremost, the appraisal districts throughout the state are required to follow the statutes by the Texas Property Tax Code. And in layman's terms, appraisal districts throughout the state have two main roles and responsibilities. The first one is to appraise property every year at market value, and the second one is to administer any exemptions, as Sue was talking about, that would actually help you lower your tax amount. So administer exemptions and appraise property at market value.
So we talked the other day and you said pretty soon, like April, notices are going out about valuations. So
Correct.
what does that even mean? How does that relate to how people need to be aware of what's coming next if they want to save the most money they can?
Absolutely. So again, the first responsibility that we have is to appraise property at market value. So right now we're in the preliminary stages of valuing 760 plus thousand properties in Bexar County, residential, commercial, business, personal property. And like Sue was saying, early April is when our office will be mailing out any value notice that has increased by more than $1,000. Now, why is that important? Because the legislature allows us to not have to mail out a notice if your value did not increase by more than 1,000. But here's the thing. If you didn't get a value notice, that does not mean you still cannot appeal your valuation. So please keep in mind that notices go out early April, and the statutory deadline to file an appeal to contest your valuation is May 15th. So that's a very, very important deadline, a date that you need to remember if you choose to file that appeal, May 15th.
So you have about 4 or 5 weeks from the time the notices go out until you have to hit the button.
Absolutely.
And filing the appeal is as simple, really, as hitting a button. I mean, all you do, you don't even have to go to your office. You can go to bcad.org, you fill out the little form, boom, boom, boom. Essentially, you put in your name and your account number.
Correct.
And you're done.
Correct.
All you have to do is hit the button and say, I want to talk about this.
Yes. We have really tried to shift our focus to the convenience of the property owners. So there, like Sue alluded to earlier, there's a plethora of information on our website. There's also, you can create an account on our online portal where you can file an exemption, you can file your appeal, you can take care of all your matters at our office online.
Right. You just need a 12-year-old to help you with it, right? If you're not tech savvy.
For those of us who are not necessarily tech savvy, my daughter can attest to that, please come to our office. We're located at 411 North Frio, and I guarantee that you will be treated with the utmost respect and courtesy because that is something that I expect of all our staff. I know that the property tax system is so complex and at times can seem a little overwhelming and scary. So it's our job, and one of the things that I stress to my staff is that We are not here to have an argument. We're not here to have a confrontation. We're here to have a conversation about what we can do to help property owners. It's so important that your viewers understand and know that our office is committed to transparency and accessibility. And we really, really mean that, because by doing that, we not only inform and educate the property owners, but we empower them to be part of the property tax system.
Right. And I heard you say the other day that there's a couple of good things at a high level that people need to be aware about, valuations that are kind of different in the last year or two and going forward. And one of them was that after a few years of rapid growth and increases, it's good news that you said the values are a little bit flat right now.
That's correct. Speaking of residential values, as every homeowner knows, the last couple of years we have seen some tremendous increases in market value. 2022, we had approximately a 28% increase in residential values alone, which was unprecedented in all the time that I've been here in Bexar County. Now, that's not just here in Bexar County, that was statewide. There was different increases, and there were significant double-digit increases. 2023, we saw an 18% increase in residential property values. Last year for 2024, we finally started seeing a slowdown, and it was just a 2% increase. And again, right now we're still starting our valuation process, but like Sue said, we are still seeing a flattening of the market. So again, to remind you all that when notices go out, if you don't get a notice early week of April, go online. We'll have your 2025 value information online. Even though we didn't mail it to you, it is available online, and there you can make a decision whether you want to appeal your valuation or not.
When does that happen? What's the date to look online for 2025?
I would say early April. I can give you the actual date later on, but when notices go out, when notices go to the mail, soon thereafter, we will also publish all the information on our website.
Yeah. Now, you said 28% increase, 18% increase. And if you were a rich guy investor and your money was going up 18% or 28%, you would think that higher values are awesome.
Right.
But for people like me, for ordinary Bexar County residents who they want their home, they want their homestead, they want to be able to stay in their home, they want generational wealth to pass on to their children, those kind of double-digit increases are just really scary.
Absolutely. And like, again, that is why, and that's a very good segue into our next point. Our appraisal districts throughout the state use mass appraisal to appraise property because, like I mentioned earlier, I think we have a total number of 525,000 residential homes. That's residential properties. We have about 70 appraisers to appraise 500 and some thousand homes. It's impossible to go one by one. So what we have to do is mass appraisal. So again, that's why it's so important that property owners inform themselves of how they can avail themselves to the process and appeal their valuation if they choose to.
Yeah. And then, so values are a little bit flat, so that's good news for ordinary people like
Yes,
us.
correct.
And then the other thing that I thought was important that you mentioned the other night at a forum was the legislature, in their wisdom, they increased the homestead exemption from 40 to 100, and they're getting ready to consider doing it again.
That's correct. Well, actually, the last legislative session in November, there was a constitutional amendment to increase it from 40,000 to 100,000, and that passed, flying colors. Right now, I believe Senate Bill 4 has already passed one chamber of the House or the Senate, and it is proposing to increase that exemption from 100,000 to 140,000 for school taxes. So again, I don't see a lot of people opposing that bill. Again, it's all about property tax relief.
Right. And the last time I did a story when people were paying their taxes, that change from 40 to 100,000 was really a pocketbook issue. When people were paying their taxes, many people I spoke to out on the streets when I was out doing this story were delighted because their tax burden was less just because the homestead exemption went from 40 to 100.
Absolutely.
So if it goes to 140, that's even better news for those of us who have modest, reasonable Bexar County resident common people. the gente.
I'm a common person too, but
it's good news for the gente, right?
Absolutely, it's good news for everybody. All kidding aside, because again, we completely understand, property tax property taxes is an issue, and it's always on the forefront of everybody's minds. And that's a really good segue. We're talking about exemptions. There's a lot of exemptions out there that I want to make sure that your viewers understand that are available to them. And more importantly, they're free of charge. Please remember that there's not only in Bexar County, in any appraisal district throughout the state, there is absolutely no fee to file any exemption. First and foremost, if you're there you go, bcad.org. If you're a homeowner, make sure that you have your homestead exemption on file. If you're over 65, please make sure that you have your over 65 exemption. Here's the thing. If you file your homestead exemption, your license has to match the mailing address, your Texas driver's license has to match the address of the property you're applying for. It also has your birth date. So when you give us a copy of that driver's license, we input your birth date onto our system. When you turn 65, we have a report that runs that says, Mr. Smith, our records indicate that you just turned 65. Guess what? We automatically added that over 65 exemption for you. So if we have that information, we will automatically put that on there. That was a legislative change a few sessions ago. Last year, I believe it was close to 5,000 accounts that we automatically put that over 65 exemption. That's really, really huge. There's also disabled persons exemptions. There's disabled veterans exemptions. Again, if there's any questions that you have, please contact our office. And as Sue has here the sign, bcad.org.
For free, because there are a lot of people in the world who will send you notices in the mail that look a lot like official
like it came from our
documents.
office.
There are people who are trying to sell you their services who masquerade as officialdom. I mean, the envelopes look official and you
Right.
look at it. I mean, I get them all the time. But you don't have to pay somebody to help you, because these people, they will help you for free.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's
Thank you.
important to remember. I think so. And then, in addition to the website, when you were talking about exemptions, I just want to show you that while I was preparing to do this, I wanted to see if I had the over 65 exemption, because a person of my advanced age, I'm eligible, right? So I went on there and I looked, and it is actually, you can see it on the website, because it says, there's a place on there that says exemptions, and mine says HS, which is Homestead, so I know that I have my Homestead exemption, so that's good. I did apply for that, right?
Yes.
You have to apply for the Homestead
Yes,
exemption.
you do.
Okay, that is something you physically have to do, and you can do that online?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so you get your Homestead exemption, and then you get to your birthday, and if you filled out, if you're, like he said, if your driver's license matches your physical home address, then it did it automatically. I did not apply for my over 65 exemption. It says HS, and then it says other, and he tells me that's what guarantees that I do have the exemption that I need. So, getting the information is as quick as going to a computer, BCAD, look up your account, look on there, and look under the place. Oh, you know what? That's important too, because when you go to BCAD and you look at your property, there's a little button on the right hand of the screen where it says like show all the information.
Right.
And so that's the key to getting all of the stuff that you need to know. When you get to your own page, you go over there to the right-hand side of the screen, and I forget what the button says, but it's like show everything or extend the information.
Drop the details. Something to that effect, but it gives you all the breakdown.
Right. So if you push that little button over there on the right-hand side of the screen, it'll give you a whole drop-down of everything related to your account, and that's where the devil is in the details, and you can see right away if you have your homestead, if you have your over 65, veterans,
Yes.
disabled, all
Yes.
of these things. We're talking about real money.
Like I said, everything that Sue's saying, I completely agree with. And it's so important, again, to remind all your viewers is that the information's out there. Again, we are all about transparency and accessibility. A lot of people, like we talked about, the people like myself who aren't necessarily tech savvy, please call our office. We also have a new chat bot for those that are a little savvier on our website, and we implemented it last year, and it's really, really worked out great. You can actually type in your question in English or Spanish and get a real-time answer right away. Again, for your viewers that speak Spanish, on our website, there's a toggle button at the top where you can actually change the language to Spanish, and everything that you're reading will convert over to Spanish. So we are all about being able to make sure that we get our message across.
Right. And like you said, so many of the things that you need to do to make these things happen. You can punch a few buttons online and you're done.
Do it online. I always use the example. I can't remember the last time I went to my credit union, because you can do anything that you need to do on your iPad, on your phone, at your at home, on your laptop. We're wanting to do again to offer the convenience to property owners of the same accessibility.
Yeah. Okay. So now we've talked about notices are going out, and then that's the time for people to prepare whatever they want to present.
Correct.
And so before you even get to the point where and you don't even like to call it protest.
I don't, Sue. I like to use the word appeal. And the reason being is that I tell our staff, we are not here to, property owners are going to come into our office with questions. They're going to come in with concerns. We're not here to have anything other than a conversation. We want to have a conversation about how we arrived at your valuation and listen to that property owner to see what evidence they have to offset any adjustments, any evaluations that we have. That would be the informal process. The informal process is your informal hearing is your first opportunity to resolve your valuation. And that is done with our staff. Again, the burden of proof is on appraisal districts to explain how we arrive at that valuation. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but getting back to the notice, on the back of that notice, if you choose to appeal your valuation, please look, because there is specific little language that we put specifically in red, because we want the property owners to know to check that box that says request evidence. By law, our office cannot give you the data that we have unless it's subject to an appeal, and more importantly, you, the property owner, ask for that information. We put it specifically in red, and I heard, and I hope this is true, we are only one of 2 counties that has actually taken that step to make sure that property owners know the need to do that. Why is that important? Again, we give you the data ahead of time. You can look at all the information that we have, and then you can start putting together your information as far as why you would think your valuation should be lowered. The informal process, we have had a very high settlement rate. Again, one-on-one conversations with property owners. If you don't find resolution with my staff, and I hope you do, then there's another appeal, and I know Sue wants to talk about that. That's the formal hearing with the appraisal review board, who is.
Wait.
Oh my.
Wait. We're not there yet.
Okay.
Because, so people, I really, that box that he just talked about checking to get
Yes.
the evidence, I don't think people understand. You just said you do mass appraisals, and what that means is a lot of your data and your rationale for valuations is set by comparable sales.
Correct.
It's based on what's happening in the market. And so when you check that box, what they're going to send back to you is specific dialed in information about your neighborhood, houses where you are, properties where you are. They try to match it for size and all that
age.
thing. Yeah.
And that's a very good point. I always tell people mass appraisal. For example, let's say we live in the same neighborhood and there are 100 properties in that neighborhood. If 20 of those homes in that neighborhood sell, that's going to affect the other 80 homes in that neighborhood. If the market's going up, all values are going to go up. If the market's going down, all values will be going down. But that does not negate the fact that you still have a right to appeal your valuation. But again, in sending you that evidence, Sue's absolutely right. We're sending you evidence specific to your neighborhood, looking at straight, I always hear apples to apples comparisons. And then from there, you can compile your evidence as to why you feel it should be lowered.
Right. And you know what I did was, not only did I look for the comps that they gave me, I went to my block.
Yes.
And I looked, you can click on the little button and you can click on the map. And I dialed into my very block and I looked at my neighbors. Mm-hmm. And one of my parcels has acreage.
Okay.
And so I looked at the values of my neighbors and said, well, he's only paying X amount per square foot, and I'm paying more per square foot. So if you're basing your numbers on comps, then why is my neighbor getting a break and I'm not getting a break? So for me, that argument worked, because I was talking about my same block, same acreage, same large parcels. The argument that I was able to mount was, hey, I only want what they have.
Equal. You want to be treated equal and uniform.
Yeah, and so that works, right? That's
Absolutely.
method that you can use to, when you go to an appeals process and you're talking to the examiners or the hearing people, what do you call the people who do this?
Are you talking about like my
When you-
staff or the
Well,
my
okay,
staff or the
so-
appraisers?
Okay, so that's another important point that I think people don't understand, and that it may be a little daunting. If you've never done it before, you think, oh, it's too scary for words, but that's not the case. Because when you get into the appeals process and you go meet with these people, there's a person from your staff, and then there's a couple of other people that are citizens whose job it is to listen to the evidence, look at the evidence, and then kind of they're almost like advocates in a way, or just fair and impartial people that
That's
are
a
there.
better assessment.
Yeah, fair and impartial people to say, okay, well, they say this and the property owner says that, so where's the truth of the matter? And they get to vote, essentially.
So now you're talking about the formal hearings. So
No, I've only been to informal, right?
no, that's the formal hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so again, the informal hearing is your first opportunity where you're going to have a one-on-one conversation with an appraiser. There's a high probability that we will find resolution at that informal level. If there's not, then the next step would be to go to the formal hearing with the appraisal review board. And those are the people that you're talking about. They are an independent body that's appointed now by our by our board of directors. And they are there. It's typically a member of a three-panel member, although property owners now have a right to select just a single-member panel. And what they do, they're an impartial judge, so to speak, that's going to hear our evidence, the property owner's evidence, and after a 15, 20-minute formal hearing, they will come to a value for that hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
They sprinkle holy water on you if you've made a good case. Now, another thing besides value per square foot or your exact neighbors is things that exist in your own property that would lower the value.
Absolutely.
And you can present evidence, say your roof is in really bad repair, for example. And so, mass appraisals don't address any of those defects that you might have with your property. So talk about some of the other things like, your plumbing system is shot, or your things that wouldn't be immediately obvious if they were, evaluating your place from the street and you got great curb appeal and your house looks nice, but the electricity needs to be replaced, or the roof is bad, or whatever. There's all kinds of things that have big impacts on the value of a place. And this is the time when you're talking about bring evidence. What kind of evidence? Like pictures or estimates?
That's a very good question. People always ask me, what is good evidence to bring? Ultimately, anything that a property owner feels would lower their valuation. You've mentioned a roof. I come from the valley. In the valley, I had never seen foundation issues like I've seen here in Bexar County. A lot of times we see foundation issues, and that's substantial adjustments to be made for that, because again, if you were going to sell your property, that you'd have to disclose that would actually lower the market value of your sale of the home. Anything that you have inside your property, because again, when you do mass appraisal, we look at a neighborhood as a whole. We don't look at individual properties. However, when you file that appeal, that's when we're able to speak one-on-one about the specifics of your property specific.
Right. So if your roof is bad and you say, here's my estimate from my roofing company that it's going to cost $10,000 to make this right.
We will look at that and make an adjustment based on that, because again, that is going to affect that property if you were going to try to sell it.
Right. And another important factor that I learned is video. We're not going to do video. You can't bring video. So like you cannot go in there with your phone and go, look, this is really bad. They like stills better. Let me just tell you from my experience, they like stills better, and they don't like to be overwhelmed either. So if you got, like a couple of stills, right, that really tell the story, and there's a million of these hearings, right, and so that they're very kind and they listen, but they've got a lot of work to do too. So they like to get to the heart of the matter. So if you go in there with one or two good pictures and an estimate, you're golden.
I think they have a limit of 10, and it's just because they have to keep all that evidence that's presented. So a lot of times when a property owner says, I have a video on my phone, if you can't get that information to them, they would have to in essence, keep the phone as evidence, so they don't want to do that. So yes, we ask, it's suggested that property owners come in with printed evidence, a couple of copies for the board members and for the appraisal staff so that they could be looking at the same information. But yes, I mean, anything up to 10 pictures, and I've always heard, bring the 10 best or worst, however you want to look at it. Whatever's going to tell the story best for you.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think something that surprised me last time is that I always like to go in person because I'm old school. But all of this can be done online. But in an informal, I got a phone call and I thought it was going to be like a Zoom, and I thought I was going to, I didn't send anything ahead of time or anything. And so I was surprised by that. So what are the options in terms of early on? Can you do it all by a phone call?
Absolutely. We have had a shift in our processes for the informal level. For the informal hearings, we have done virtual hearings, we have done phone hearings, and also we can just exchange information via email. Again, this is all about allowing property owners the convenience of reaching us and us reaching them without having to have them physically come to our building. As you can see, I mean, there's no part of Bexar County that you can go to that does not have construction. Downtown is no different. We have limited parking space. There's construction all around. So again, right now for our informals, we have an appointee system. That's a self-scheduling system. When you file your appeal, you yourself can dictate and specifically pick a date and time that you want us to contact you. Why is that important? Because before, for the better part of 30 some years, when you filed an appeal, our office would send you a letter saying, Sue Kalberg, I need you to be at my office Monday at 2 o'clock. You had to work around our schedule. With this appointee system, we work around yours. So it has allowed more people, again, the convenience of being able to file an appeal, taking the time during lunch, during their work break, at home, on a laptop, on an iPad. And it's really, we've heard a lot of good positive feedback about that accessibility.
Yeah, and not only that, but they're also really good at working with you if something comes up. And this happened in my life this last time around because I had a family member have a medical emergency, and I had my little appointment time all set up, and all I had to do was call and say, look, I've had a medical emergency, can we push this back? And it was like, presto changeo.
Yeah.
It was that simple. So, no matter what happens, there's a way to make it right and to get what you need.
Absolutely.
Ultimately.
We want to, again, avail ourselves to help in any way we can.
Yeah. And I think it's important to really emphasize when you're in this process and people are, you go with your evidence and you're presenting your evidence, that people are listening to you, and it's called a formal hearing, but don't let that language scare you, because essentially what happens is you go in there and your staff person says, here's what we think, here's our comps, and then the ordinary person gets a chance to say, well, this is what I think, right?
Yeah.
And then the other folks that are in the room, whose names I can't recall right now.
There's several of them.
Yeah.
But that's
but
a really...
They ask questions. Right?
That's a really good point.
Of both sides.
Oh, absolutely. So again, informally, and if I may piggyback off of that, because this is really, really important. We have a very good settlement rate informally, but like I mentioned before, a lot of times property owners say, you know what, I still want to pursue this a little further to the formal hearing, which is what Sue's talking about. The important thing to remember is, once you have an informal hearing with my staff, and we're just going to use round, simple numbers here. So let's say, for example, Sue appeals her valuation, $100,000. And we say, you know what, looking at your evidence, we can offer you $80,000. She's like, you know what, I think it should still be lower. I am going to go to the formal hearing. We will make a note of that valuation, of that offer that we made informally, and that will be what we offer at least at the formal hearing. So you can't get any worse than that. But again, that'll be our the basis for our recommendation at the formal hearing. We will not go back. The formal hearing will still start at the market value, but that note will already be on there that informally we had offered you $80,000. So that's still something.
You can't lose.
Right.
You can't go backwards, and I mean, it's not like you're going to go if you up the ante. It's not like your value is going to increase.
I just feel it's disingenuous to say I offered you $80,000 informally, but now at the formal level, well, you should have taken it over. That's not the way we operate.
Right.
Again, if property owners feel that there's room for further adjustment, let's go to the formal hearing. That information will be clearly stated on the account, so the appraiser that's down there will have that also, and that'll be where they're going to recommend, if not more, based on the evidence.
Right. And as a person who's walked through it myself, I'm here to say that if you present your evidence and you've got a good case and you've got good pictures or you've got good estimates or whatever, it's done and done, right? I mean, it's instant gratification, right? Because somebody goes, it's like horse trading. If you are a bargainer and you think, it's like a flea market or something.
I don't know about that. I've never traded a horse, but
you go. So one side goes, well, how about this, and the other side goes, how about this, and you kind of meet in the middle, and you go, okay, that's fair. Well, done and done. Boom. Like nobody bangs a gavel, but you get what you get a resolution.
You do, and that's really, really important. Speaking of that, if we can kind of talk about the reappraisal plan, and talking about exemptions, it's really important to know that our board of directors this year has adopted a 2025-2026 reappraisal plan, because we've talked a lot about market value. That's what our property values are based on, market value. Why is that important? Because we've also talked about exemptions. Exemptions lower the amount of taxes that you pay. That's called taxable value. So for 2025, anybody that files an appeal and gets their valuation lowered, and you don't do anything other than go to settle informally or at the ARB, by that means you don't take it to arbitration, you don't take it to litigation, you don't go to a SOA hearing, which is the State Office of Administrative Hearings. If all you do is speak to my staff and come to a resolution, or go to the ARB and let them make the decision for you, that market value will be your 2026 valuation moving forward for 2026. Why is that important? Because again, the taxable value, like Sue said, that lowers what you're actually paying taxes on. That could still see a 10% increase depending on where you are between your market value and your taxable value. Again, if you have any questions, you can go to our website and you can see the difference between what you're being appraised at and what you're paying taxes on.
Yes, and when we're talking about values into the future, I think it's important to note that the market is always changing. Everything that you do is based on a market that could be way high or way low. And so you have to make it up as you go along every single year. You have to look at hard numbers, a lot of hard numbers all the time.
And that's why it's so important to look at current data every year. But you're absolutely right. The market could go up, it could go down. Right now we're seeing a slowing of the market, which is good for homeowners. But yes, every single year we look at the most current data.
Yeah. Okay, so we're about to wrap it up here. So I think it's important to remember some of our key points.
Okay.
That BCAD.org is a good place to go because there's free help. There's videos, there's forms, there's all kinds of things you can click on. It's awesome.
Yes.
And so BCAD.org. What's your phone number?
210-242-2432.
And so you can get help online. You can get help on the phone. You can go there at North Frio?
411 North Frio.
411 North Frio. Awesome people. They'll help you out.
Thank you so much.
And then if you didn't get your question answered, call them up. So thanks for joining us. I hope you'll stay with us across all of our platforms. Here at KENS 5, we are, you know who we are?
KENS 5.
We are San Antonio's
San Antonio's own.
Yeah. And you are too. So thanks for being with us today. Stay with us.